The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Hello, my name is Gro Andrews Steine, and I'd like to talk to you about how you can use the novel The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime to teach language in the ESL classroom. Before I get on with the lesson plan, I'd like to talk a bit about the class and how I got to teach them, and a little bit about the learning objectives and competence aims. Okay, first of all, the class. The class is a ninth grade class, consists of 5 students, 3 boys and 2 girls, and I find them to be motivated but quite a shy group of students. I came into the class as a substitute teacher. The teacher had fallen ill, and I needed to assess them and check out if it's possible for them to join my 10th grade class, which I normally teach, and we can work together, or if we need to find another teacher for them. So my time frame for this lessons plan was quite strict. I could use 4 weeks, so I decided to use 1 week to try some intensive reading, and 1 week for more extensive reading, where I wanted to inspire them to speak and to communicate. I find that the pupils really like to learn English, but they don't want to talk to each other. They'd like to read a text, and then they want to write the answers to tasks in their book. So the lesson plan I've made for them might be quite challenging. So, the competence aims and learning objectives. In the national curriculum, I've chosen 3 competence aims I want to work with. The oral and written one are quite similar: to understand and use general vocabulary related to different topics. And the culture, society and literature one is to discuss and elaborate on the people and on the way people live and how they socialize in Great Britain, USA, and other English speaking countries, and Norway. So what I want them to be able to do after this 4-week period is be able to use new words and phrases from the text. I want them to be aware of the difference between inner and outer actions in a text, and I want them to be able to reflect and talk about the concept integration. So, the whats, the hows, and the whys. I've decided to work on the novel The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, mostly because I loved the novel myself. I read it years ago, and I've never forgotten it. And when it turned up on this in this course, I was really happy. When I read it again, I found that the language and the vocabulary in this text is quite suitable for my students. The story, I think, will be inspiring to them. That I think they'll be able to relate to a boy who wants to find out who killed a dog, but also a boy who has trouble connecting to his parents. And I think they'll want to know what happened to the mother. So I think it's going to be a very engaging read for them. I also think some of the cultural references will go down well. Most of the students in this class really enjoyed the TV series Sherlock, so I think they'll understand the Sherlock Holmes references, and they've been to London for a week as a group, so they know the signs for the underground, and they know the names of some shops. So I think that will go down well as well. Also, I think one of the themes in the book about being different and feeling like you're not a part of something will be something they can relate to. Since we have a boy in the 10th grade who's autistic, and I think they can recognize some of his behavior in Christopher, the main character in the book. I've decided to try and use both extensive and intensive reading, and I also want to try role playing. As I said before, the class prefers planned speech, and I think by using role playing and acting, I'll try to motivate him to be more spontaneous. Also, I think if they learn, if they're able to prepare lines and practice them beforehand, it'll be easier for them to talk in the small groups. And then when we open up for a more spontaneous discussion later at the end of the first week and later in the 4 weeks we have at our disposal, I think they've learned enough to be more confident and try to speak English without practicing beforehand. So, the lesson plan. I've just planned for this next week. So it's 2 lessons. They first have a 45-minute unit on the Tuesday, and on the Friday they have a 19 minutes unit. So lesson 1 lasts for about 45 minutes. I thought I'd start by introducing the book and the method. So I decided I have 6 books, but I've decided to hand out copies of chapters 2 to 11 first. Then they can use it and write and take notes on the paper, and they can use it when they have the role play later. Also, but I want to give them the text so that they can talk about the drawings, the layout of the books, and get a whole understanding of how the chapters numbered and that type of thing. Then I thought I'd read chapters 2 to 11 aloud to the class. I have it, as you might be able to hear, a terrible cold. So I might use an audiobook, but I think I'll try to read it aloud while they listen to the story. And then I want us to try and talk together about the first impressions they get of the main character and the text itself. I think by talking about the first, it will give them a little bit of encouragement when they have to write a paragraph of their own thoughts and impressions of the text. And before the lesson finishes, I think I'll have to introduce the next lesson and tell them what we're going to do on Friday and how we're going to work on the role play. So on the Friday, we want to have a short recap. So that I'll ask them first to read chapter 11 again individually, silently, and then I'm going to divide them into 2 groups, and then they have to decide themselves how they want to act out this scene. This is a scene where Christopher's found the dog in the garden, and the police has arrived to stop him because he's making a spectacle. So what I want them to do is to use the handouts, write down or mark the lines, and make sure they notice how the characters behave, not only what they say, but how they behave. And take note of the words that notes their actions and the sounds they make, if they groan or sniffle or that type of thing. And then after that, then I want them to practice to play and act out the situation. And I want them to try to learn their lines, not the likes, learn their lines, and just practice rolling on the floor or lawn or acting out. And then I want them to show the little play to the other group. After we've done that, and I'm sure we're going to have a few laughs, I want to sum up the lesson by have a short discussion in class where they talk about how it felt to act out these scenes. And most importantly, I want them to talk about the difference between the inner dialogue and the outer action, because when you read this chapter, you get this calm feeling. But if you actually try to see what Christopher actually does, it's quite a dramatic situation. So I want them to experience that the difference here. So after they've done this intensive reading of this chapter, I hope that has inspired them to read the rest of the book. I think it's easy enough for them to understand, even if it's quite philosophical and quite deep, and it's still funny and sometimes sad. And I think they can relate to many of the conflicts and situations in the book. Also, I think the sentences and the vocabulary in the book is the level is so easy they can pick up a lot of new phrases, and I think this will motivate them to actually think they can learn from reading, and they'll enjoy reading, and they'll feel they'll learn actual life skills from reading. And I hope the way we worked with the first chapter will encourage them to speak and not always be in control of what they say, but actually try to be more spontaneous when they speak.